The bench was the last one in the shade. That was the only reason she asked. Diana Voss, minus 41 years old, founder of Voss Capital. A woman whose name appeared on 3 Forbes lists and whose assistant managed a calendar booked 6 weeks in advance. Minus stood at the edge of Meridian Park on a Tuesday afternoon and asked a stranger if she could sit down. The stranger was a man in a faded jacket reading something on his phone, a small girl asleep against his arm. He looked up, moved slightly too. "Make room without being asked." "Thank you," Diana said. "Sure," he said, and went back to his phone. For 20 minutes, they sat in the kind of comfortable silence that only happens between people who have no expectations of each other. A stranger and a stranger on the last bench in the shade. Then his phone buzzed. He shifted, and Diana saw on the screen of his phone for exactly 1 second before he turned it over, a notification she recognized. The donor registry app she had been checking. Every week for 3 years. 3 years earlier, on a Tuesday night in November, Diana Voss had been driving back from a board dinner when a truck ran a red light on Crescent Avenue. She had lost 4 units of blood before the paramedics reached her. At the hospital, the trauma team had discovered her blood type minus AB negative, the rarest type, held by less than 1% of the population. The blood bank was critically low. A transfusion request went out across 3 counties. 1 person responded within the hour, a man named Owen Briggs who had registered as a rare blood type donor years earlier and received the emergency alert on his phone at 11 p.m. while putting his daughter to bed. He had driven 40 minutes to the hospital in the rain, given blood, signed the anonymity form, driven home, never heard another word. Diana had woken up in the ICCU with no memory of the accident and a debt she could not repay to a person she could not name. She had been searching for him ever since. If you believe that some moments are too precise to be accidents, minus that the right people find each other eventually, by whatever means necessary, minus please, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone you love, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Because what Diana was about to realize, on the last bench in the shade, is something that will make you look at every stranger differently for the rest of your life. In the 20 minutes before the notification, they had talked the way strangers sometimes do when there is no agenda and no performance required. He had told her his daughter's name was Rosie, that she fell asleep every time they came to this park because of the fountain minus something about the sound of water, that he had learned to bring a book because you didn't interrupt a child who was finally sleeping. Diana had laughed at that, a real laugh, the kind that surprised her. She had told him she worked in finance. She did not say which finance. He had nodded with the complete absence of interest that she found, unexpectedly, like a breath of fresh air. He told her his name was Owen. He asked nothing in return, which she also found unusual enough to notice. They had settled back into comfortable silence. Rosie stirred slightly against his arm. Owen reached over without looking and adjusted her jacket with the practiced ease of a man who has done it 10,000 times. Diana watched this and felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time, minus the particular warmth of witnessing someone be completely, unself-consciously good at the most ordinary thing. His phone buzzed on the bench between them. Owen reached for it minus, and in the movement, the screen faced briefly toward Diana. 1 second, maybe less. The notification was from the National Donor Registry. She knew the interface exactly minus. She had the same app on her own phone, had checked it every Sunday morning for 3 years with the particular discipline of someone who has made finding something into a practice rather than a hope. The preview text read, "Your rare blood type donation record has been accessed by Owen." Turned the phone over before she could read the rest. Diana sat very still. Her heart was doing something complicated. "Can I ask you something?" she said. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. "Sure," he said. "Are you a blood donor?" Owen looked at her. Something shifted in his expression, minus not suspicion, more the look of a man recalibrating a conversation he thought he understood. "Yea," he said simply. "Rare type, AB negative. I get alerts sometimes for emergencies." Diana looked at her hands in her lap. "Oh, AB negative. Less than 1%. 3 years ago, she said carefully. Did you ever respond to a nighttime emergency request? A car accident, November, Crescent Avenue. Owen went still the way people do when memory arrives without warning. Yeah, he said slowly. I did. How do you know about that? Diana looked up at him. Because I was the accident, she said quietly. Owen looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at the park around them, minus the fountain, the trees, the particular Tuesday afternoon light that had made this the last bench in the shade, minus as if checking whether the world had actually just done what it appeared to have done. You've been looking for me, he said. Not a question, minus the donor registry notification had already told him that much. For 3 years, Diana said. I hired 2 researchers. I attended every donor event in the state. I built a foundation around it. She paused. You were anonymous. I didn't need to be found, Owen said quietly. I just drove to the hospital. It was raining. It didn't feel like anything significant. Diana stared at him. You saved my life, she said, and it didn't feel significant. Owen looked at Rosie, still asleep against his arm, at her small face, completely peaceful, completely trusting. Someone else would have gone, he said. But they didn't, Diana said. You did. Owen had no answer for that. He looked at the fountain for a while. Rosie sighed in her sleep and burrowed slightly closer to his arm, the way children do when they sense even unconsciously that the person beside them is the safest place available. Diana watched this and understood very clearly why he had driven 40 minutes in the rain at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday to give blood for a stranger. Diana had imagined this moment for 3 years. She had prepared speeches. She had imagined grand gestures minus a foundation named after him, a ceremony, a check large enough to change whatever needed changing. Sitting beside Owen Briggs on a park bench with his daughter asleep on his arm, she understood that none of those things were right. Is there anything, she started? No, Owen said. Gently but completely. You haven't heard what I was going to say. I know what you were going to say, he said, and I appreciate it. But I didn't do it for anything in return. Diana looked at him for a long moment. Then what do I do with 3 years of gratitude? She asked. It came out more raw than she intended. Owen thought about it the way she was already learning was characteristic of him, minus carefully without rushing, giving the question the weight it deserved. Do you have somewhere to be right now? He asked. No, she said. Her assistant would disagree. She didn't care. Then sit here for a while, Owen said. Rosie'll wake up in about 20 minutes, and she'll want someone to watch her on the swings. She likes an audience. Diana looked at the fountain, at the sleeping child, at the man who had driven 40 minutes in the rain for a stranger and called it nothing significant. I can do that, she said. What grew from that Tuesday afternoon was not dramatic. It grew the way most important things do, minus in small increments, without announcement. Coffee the following week, because Owen's regular cafe was near Diana's office, and they had both noticed this simultaneously. Dinner the week after with Rosie present, who delivered a comprehensive and largely critical review of the restaurant's dessert menu that left both adults unable to speak for different reasons. Diana redirected her donor foundation. Instead of searching for one anonymous man, it began supporting the infrastructure that made anonymous giving possible, minus blood banks, donor registries. The overnight systems that meant someone like Owen could receive an alert at 11 p.m. and actually be able to help. Owen never accepted anything she offered directly. He accepted, eventually, that she was going to show up minus for Rosie's school play, for the park on Tuesday afternoons, for the ordinary Tuesday evenings that became the structure of something neither of them had planned. On the 1-year anniversary of the bench, Diana gave Owen one thing he couldn't refuse, minus a framed photograph of the view from that bench, taken at the same time on the same Tuesday afternoon. She had gone back alone to take it. On the back she had written 4 words, the last bench in the shade. Owen hung it in the hallway where Rosie could see it every morning. She asked about it once. That's where I met Diana, he said. Because you saved her, Rosie asked. Owen looked at the photograph for a moment. No, he said, because there wasn't any other shade. If this story reminded you that the most important moments in your life might be disguised as the most ordinary ones, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to believe in the impossible today, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Before you go, tell us in the comments, have you ever done something small for a stranger that turned out to mean far more than you knew? Tell us. Let this be the place where the quiet acts finally get to be seen. Because somewhere in Meridian Park, on the last bench in the shade, two people are sitting in the kind of comfortable silence that only happens between people who have no more expectations of each other because everything they hoped for has already arrived. He drove 40 minutes in the rain for a stranger he never met. She spent 3 years looking for a man she had never seen. They found each other because there wasn't any other shade.